Example of that. So we've heard people talk about the industry being bottom-up and not top-down, and proactive, and about it being about relationships. So my life is kind of an example of that. I lived in Brazil for 4 years, and because I was living in Brazil and I was a foreigner, I had to kind of develop all sorts of different things that I did in order to earn a living. So I write about music. I also write about travel. I take pictures, I take travel pictures, I take pictures for CDs, I take pictures for companies. I kind of do what I can. I also compile CDs. So I always look for opportunities. And what I kind of like to add to that set of phrases, which I think might be helpful, is lateral thinking. Because there are all sorts of ways that you can get yourself into the press. And there's the head-on way, which is just trying to get in to a music paper or a music magazine. And there are also all sorts of ways that you can do that. Firstly, you can send CDs to the editor, but you can also try and develop a relationship with a particular writer. And that involves reading what they've written before, understanding what they like, and perhaps approaching them direct. Writers in the UK, at least, are very spoon-fed by promoters. Writers who write about Brazilian music don't just write about Brazilian music, they write about what is called world music, which is basically everything which is not in English. So that means that one day they'll be writing about a band from Iceland, and the next day they'll be writing about a band from Australia. And their level of understanding of Brazilian music may be very limited, which is on the one hand bad, but on the other hand encouraging, because it means that if you develop a relationship with them, then you can persuade them quite easily of what is new and what isn't new, and what's exciting and what isn't exciting. So that's the first thing I suggest, developing a relationship, if possible, directly with a writer. You can do that by talking to somebody like me, but you can also do that through the internet, because most writers have websites. And then you can send your CDs directly and say, I noticed that you were very interested in Grupo Afro Reggae. Well, this is a bit like Grupo Afro Reggae, you might like it. And what you need to do that is to speak English well, or to know somebody who does speak English well. Because if you don't write elegantly, and if your product doesn't look like it's refined, if you don't have a decent website, if you don't have a good quality of English which sounds like a native English speaker, then you're going to be taken less seriously. So if you can enlist the help of somebody who is a native speaker, it'll help you greatly. And a good website, there are many great website designers, and good images. You could even try developing a relationship with someone in the UK who's a writer who can help you with that too, which is a way in which creative people can work together. Now the second thing, which is kind of to do with lateral thinking, is to think about other people who write about music who are not music writers. Now music is not the biggest industry in the world. The biggest industry in the world is the travel industry. Brazil is an extremely fashionable destination at the moment, and it's increasingly fashionable. And it's increasingly fashionable because it's a wonderful place, but also because there's a whole idea about Brazil which exists outside Brazil, which is largely the product of people like Mario Testino, and who produced Gisele Bündchen, the image of Gisele Bündchen. And that's very seductive to people. Being Brazilian is very cool. Brazil is a wonderful destination. Everybody, I mean, you never have a problem being Brazilian because of the way people see you. So, who writes about music other than music writers? The travel press. The travel press never gets sent CDs. Travel writers are never sent CDs. So why not get in touch with travel writers who write about Brazil and say, this is great CD, this is the latest stuff that you'll hear in Trancoso. Travel articles are increasingly modular. So it might be the 7 best things in Porto Alegre. One of them is inevitably either going to be a place to hear music live, or perhaps a local singer. That's another way in which you can get yourself international attention. And that international attention can be useful internationally, but it also can, as Mark was saying before, filter back here, so it gives you more of a profile here. I also like to think about compilations. Now I do compilation CDs. That's another way of getting profile internationally. Get to know the people who do international compilations. You can find those on the internet through sites like amazon.co.uk, amazon.com. Get in touch with the person who's done it. It just requires a little bit of research, develop that relationship. You get onto an international compilation CD, you can use that back here, it gives you more exposure. And I kind of like to think a little bit about lifestyle and product, which also ties in with the travel stuff that I was mentioning, and the idea of Brazil as being a very cool destination. It's kind of important, I think, if you want to approach the international market, to understand what the international market expects of Brazil. And as I say, people don't really know as much as they should. So Brazil is associated, you can associate particular destinations even with a kind of soundtrack, you know, because we're living in a vicarious world where everything has a soundtrack. So Brazil, the soundtrack that Brazil might be used for is a chill-out room, or it might be used for a cool beach place. I mean, because that's the idea that a lot of people have of Brazil. That's maybe not great, but it can also be taken advantage of, which is one of the reasons I believe that Bebel Gilberto has been so successful. Okay, so that's a kind of a little summary of my thoughts. I'd just like to mention one thing about what I think you need. I've kind of touched on that already. I think the key thing is to have stuff which is written in elegant English, to have a site which looks really professional, perhaps with some flash, some great images, and most importantly of all, the capacity to listen to your music. And it would be great if people could download that music too, so they could buy it directly from you. So, that's kind of the summary. If anybody would like to talk to me afterwards, then I'd be most happy to do that. And I'd just like to say thanks very much for the opportunity to be here in Rio Grande do Sul, and to be talking about music with you in the country which for me is the world capital of music. So thank you very much.